into OEM. So it plays nicely with all of the major brand systems, the white branded version, right, going by Iconics. But there's no reason you can't use the Schneider branded version. They're identical to each other, and that's true of the 7000 series, which is the legacy series, and the 8000 series thermostats. All of the applications are the same in the 7000 series between Schneider and Viconics. Same thing is true of the 8000 series. The difference between the 7000 series and the 8000 series is the interface. So there's a color touch screen on the 8000. That's the stat on the left. This guy. Got a pen here. That guy. And there's more I/O on the 8000 series. Okay. Just real quick to talk about the 7000 series, it's still a viable product. There's no end of life on it yet. It covers applications like baseboard radiation, induction units, chilled beam. We do UFAD with it in the 7200 series and the 7300 series. We have fan coil, 1, 2, 3 speed fan. We do line voltage, low voltage. And then the 7600 series is targeted at package rooftop or heat pump. And if you want to know more about it, you can reach out to obviously the Brody team and me, either way. So if they have questions, they'll reach out to me. As far as communications, the 7000s come without communications. There's some good music in the background there. And
can everybody go on mute, please?
Yeah, probably a good idea. Just unmute if you have a question. How's that? So getting a little background. Okay, cool. So I can add to the 7000 series a ZigBee wireless card. It talks ZigBee wireless to a gateway. I can add back-end MSTP to a, so it's or, right? I can have ZigBee or I can have back-end MSTP, or I can have LAN on a limited amount of models. There's no Wi-Fi capability in the 7000 series. That's all I'm going to say about 7000, unless I have questions. So I'm going to jump into the 8000. So the 8000 series is an application-specific controller, right? It's basically a DDC level controller with a thermostat interface on it. It's configurable. It has all kinds of sequences of operation built into it that'll help you optimize comfort and energy efficiency. It's designed for new construction projects as well as retrofit projects. And it reduces costs. Why? Because it's configurable, so you don't have to program it, right? You don't have to wait for a programmer. You can commission on the spot, so you can install it as soon as you have power to the room controller in your unit. You can start doing your commissioning, right? So you don't have to wait. And it meets the 8000 in its standard configuration probably meets 90 to 95% of the application terminal unit applications out in the field. It can do 100% of the terminal unit applications in the field. Sometimes with a little bit of customization. I'll talk about how we do that. So it's a configurable device with an onboard menu. The menus can be password protected. It's always programmable, 7-day schedule programmable. You can customize it, so you can take the base application. So an instance is package rooftop. It comes in 2 heat, 2 cool. That's our standard application. But sometimes we run into 4 stages of cooling in a package rooftop unit. We can do 4 stages of cooling by adding a little bit of custom scripting into the 8000 to a programming language called Lua. It's an open source programming language. The display is customizable, so the background colors is customizable. The background screens are customizable. You can change colors. It can put alarm information up, which you can see here on this. I don't know how well you can see the screen, but on the it says room 1705. That's a custom display someone put into it, right? But that could be an alarm, that could be a temperature, right? It could be a pressure, whatever you want it to be. The buttons on the bottom are configurable. So you can hide the buttons, you can add subsets of the buttons. The question mark on the end is actually configurable. So there's about 20 icons you can put in there. And you can make that take action, which is pretty cool. So it always comes with back that MSTP on board as its base and its base configuration. So when you buy an SC8000, whether it's an 8300 or an 8600, you always get temperature, you always get humidity, all right? You always get back that MSTP. The options to add to it are some plug-in modules, right? ZigBee on board is an option, and a passive or PIR, passive infrared occupancy sensor. So back to the scripting, there's 12 free BACnet variables. They're accessible through a menu in the 8000. So I can create custom set points and scenarios that I can drive internally from the thermostat. So, okay. Any questions? Keep going? Okay.
Yeah, just if everybody can mute, we're getting some background noise. There's a couple guys that aren't muted. Ralph, just a question about the 7000 before you get too far deep into it. Are they just not manufacturing as many? Because they're tough to get a hold of.
Okay, get a hold of from okay, we changed them, we consolidated the model numbers, right? We are stocking some. We have 2 distribution centers, one in Pennsylvania and one in Clovis, California.
So is there a way for us to directly check the stocking location? I think it's in Mechanicsburg, right?
Mechanicsburg,
something like that. Yes.
Yeah. If you go onto our iPortal site,
right,
it'll tell you how many are inventory at each location. If you're having a problem getting them, contact me. Get in touch with me. Because I can get right to manufacturing, and if you have a customer that has some urgency and needs an expedited order, I can help you with that. We'll talk directly to the factory, right? So I do that all the time.
And then for the iPortal, do we have somebody in our company that signs us up, or do you sign us up, or? So
all I need is a request. I'm not sure if George and Lori.
Nate and Lori, they're ones.
George, Lori does it for us, George.
So there's no reason you guys, so more of you guys, the whole sales team could have access to that. That's not a problem. And I could do a training on how to use it. It's pretty powerful. So, because you can look at things like open orders, right? You can look at shipping information directly on iPortal as well as obviously product.
And Nate probably has access to that already. As a sales guy, we just need to know, stocking ability. That's all. All right, we can take.
Yeah. Okay. But if you guys want, at some point, I can do a run through on iPortal for you. So I talked about the Lewis scripting. There's 2 ways to download Lewis scripting into an 8000. One is through BACnet, so you can actually program it through BACnet. There's 10 program variables that are available to put Lewis scripting in. Most people do it directly. So there's a micro USB port on the bottom of the room controller. One that's sticking into Tom Brady here. So you plug in the micro USB key, use a laptop, and you can download it using this we call it uploader tool, software tool. It's a free software. You can download it off the Viconics website. So if you go into products and you look at an 8000 series controller, there's a bunch of downloads, documentation, and the uploader tool is part of that. The latest version is 3.2. Here's the Viconics website. It's pretty straightforward. It works for a Schneider or a Viconics SC8000. And the things that you use the uploader for is to load in Lewis scripting, upgrades of firmware, right? So if you have a new firmware, you can load in, and now you can load into the uploader tool, and standby images. Like, again, actually I got to get rid of this guy, my former favorite quarterback. So Tom Brady. All right, I/O. So on the 8000, there's a bunch of I/O. So I said we could do 100% of non-proprietary terminal unit applications with this guy, right? Why? We got 7 inputs available. There's 7, they're now, and this is recent, they're now all universal inputs. So they're either binary or analog inputs, right? UI 16 and 17 are multifunction, meaning that you can select different applications, like whether it's a window input or fan lock input. Input 17 is door contacts, filter, service alarms. If we don't use it for that, we can use it as a raw analog input. So, and then we have, again, 5 more. 5 additional AIBIs, right? We call them universal inputs. They can be used for just any kind of sensor you want to bring in to the room controller, so a thermistor or a 0 to 10 volt input, right? And also, they're used within our application. So that's if they're not used for our standard application. So if I want to use a CO2 sensor to drive an economizer, I'm going to use UI 19, okay? So on and so forth. Outputs, we have 9 outputs. We have 5 binary outputs, 4 analog outputs on this thing. They're used for specific applications. Again, if an output isn't used for a specific application, we can use it for customization using ULA. Okay. These are the model numbers of the 8000s. Now, the SE designation is Schneider Electric. If it was a Viconics version, you would use VT. The model number convention is slightly different, but all the same information is included. So I'm going to work off of Schneider model numbers for the moment. So SE 8650 is rooftop or heat pump. Okay. SER 8350 is for line voltage fan coil units. What that means is there's an interface that is the standard SE8000 interface, and then there's a 3-wire connection to a relay pack, right, that you install in the unit. Great drawing skills. The SE8350 is fan coil, baseboard, radiation, duct heater, so on and so forth. And we have some new models we just added into the product family called the SEZs. They're a true pressure-independent VAV or a pressure-dependent VVT solution. Either way. Our VAV solution is a remote damper actuator and velocity pressure sensor that you mount at the unit. You run an 8-conductor cable back down to the SEZ and do your wiring, and you've got commissioning from the floor. So you put in your K factors. You can set mins, maxes from the floor. You can drive the dampers, all those sorts of things. So, but what's really important and why I got to this point is that all of these models have a B in them, right? That means it always has back then MSTP on board, right? Where there's a free slot on board the 8000 to add different types of plug-in cards. One of them is a CO2 card, so I can have a CO2 card. The other one is a ZigBee communication card or a Wi-Fi card. Or I can buy it now with ZigBee on board. That's what this P is, if you guys can see that, right? So that means that there's ZigBee Pro on board, that slot is still free. And why that's important is when I talk about the Wi-Fi card, is I can install a Wi-Fi card and have ZigBee communication both on the same unit, right? So I can be communicating Wi-Fi back to IP back to my network level controller, so and have a bunch of wireless peripherals talking ZigBee. I'll show that here. So again, it always has back-end MSTP on board. I can have hard connected back-end MSTP into my 8000. And I also can have ZigBee wireless, which will communicate to an ecosystem of sensors like CO2, temp humidity, or a temp humidity sensor, or leak detector, or door and window contacts, or motion. Okay. It can be one sensor, it can be 20 sensors, it can be 20 of the same kind, or it can be a mix of all of these sensors. Okay. Now, if you buy the base model, just the regular BACnet model without the ZigBee communication card on board, you still have the opportunity to buy a plug-in ZigBee card, okay, but it will take up that slot, okay? These are the different sensors we have available today. So we have an aux sensor, door window contact, leak detection, so for like a condensate pan, CO2 temp humidity or just temp humidity. And here's another type of aux sensor. Now our aux sensors also have temperature and humidity on board. I don't know if you know that or not, but that's so that you can have occupancy, temp, humidity out of that one sensor. Right? Okay. All right. So that was the ecosystem off of an 8000. Do you guys have any questions? I didn't talk about ranges, so we usually say design to 30 feet from the stat. Right? All of the objects are BACnet objects on board. When you're talking with the ecosystem, so I get not only get my temperature, humidity, and whatever the device, CO2, for instance, with this guy, right? But I also get a low battery alarm. I didn't mention that. So battery life is 2 to 10 years, and you can set up an alarm notification to change the battery. Anything else? Any questions? No? Okay. I'll move on. Okay. So you get all that with an 8000. Hard connected to back-end MSTP, that's cool. But you're gonna run into jobs that it may not be easy to get communication wiring around the building, right? So we have something called a wireless gateway. In the Schneider world, it's called an NPM. In the Viconics world, no, it's an NPM-GW, excuse me. In the Viconics world, it's called a GW2. same product either way. It looks like this. It's a white box with a couple of antennas. You can buy it with just ZigBee on board, or you can buy it with ZigBee and Ocean on board, and Ocean Wireless. Not many people today are using an Ocean Wireless, but we do run into projects occasionally. Typically, people use our Ocean solution, gateway to an Ocean, as a temperature sensor solution. So it's temperature sensors back in the gateway. Gateway becomes BACnet IP. All the objects are exposed as BACnet objects. We don't sell an Ocean sensors anymore. We used to. We just point you to different manufacturers of Ocean devices. Today, I'm going to focus on ZigBee, but if you have questions about an Ocean, I'm happy to answer them. So you can buy it with ZigBee on board or ZigBee and an Ocean on board. With ZigBee, I can communicate to an ecosystem of wireless SE8000s, right? A small or a micro BMS system could be just this solution. It could be just this. I've got a BACnet IP port, or an Ethernet port, excuse me, on board. I plug into that with a laptop. There's a built-in web server, and there's built-in engineering tools, and I'll touch on that in a couple of minutes. But this could be a BMS system or the start of a BMS system. So you get in the building, get some control of the devices. There's some simple visualization tools within the gateway that you can do things like look at trends and change set points. They're not pretty, but they work. But you can use that as a start to a BMS, and then later on, you can add a network level control, right? And build up on your BMS system. So it's a pretty inexpensive way to get into a job. I know Paul was looking at a job just recently. I think it was. Paul, can you talk about that application that you just looked at with the gateways?
I think Kevin might be able to explain it better.
Okay.
Kevin. Kevin Rowell, you're on mute.
Yep, I am now.
So,
So I believe the application was actually for systems contractors. I believe Marshall is actually on this call. He's the one that got the gateway, and it was, I believe, an assisted living facility that he was pulling everything into.
Yeah, we're working on that design right now. So what we're looking at is they've got some humidity issues from using standard thermostats. So we were able to get the Lewis script, and Ryan and Tony are both looking into what we can do to go ahead and get the sensors in. Now we're looking at laying out the gateways because it's a really large facility. So this will be an ongoing project. So we'll keep you up to date as we move forward. But so far, the thermostats themselves are working great for the dehumidification. So we're pretty pleased with that.
Excellent. That's a good approach, right? You're building up your solution for the customer, and you hit the control part of the job where you could have the most impact initially, right? And kind of build it up. So that's good. Who gave you the Lewis script? Is that something that, did you work with one of my guys, Steve Winterberger, or? Yeah. Okay. All right.
It was Patrick.
Oh, with Patrick.
Yeah.
Either way. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Great. Pat. So he's a great resource. I have Steve Winterberger in Connecticut, who, if I need to get someone out to a job site, if we have any problems or challenges or questions about deployment, we'll send Steve out to the job. Here, I'll go, right? More often than not lately, it's Steve, and he'll go down and take a look at the job. He'll do training for you guys. So at some point in time, if we want to do a hands-on gateway training on how to bring stats on the gateway, we can do that. So I'm not gonna do that today, but we can do that at a later date. So, all right, so let's get into these things. So the NPM GW is a typical product that most systems integrators are buying today. We do have two other flavors. UN has some inputs on board, the NPM UN, and a VAV. I'll be straight out honest with you. We've probably sold a couple of thousand of the VAV box. They're relatively expensive, but if you can't get there with communication wire, it works. So what we do is we take the VAV box controller and bring 1, 2, 10, 20 back into a gateway, right? Communicating ZigBee wireless between them. The UN is used as just like a light plant controller. You got a couple of pumps, something like that you want to drive. You can do that with this. Again, it's not as popular as a gateway. Most of the contractors feel much more comfortable with hard connected plant control, right? So they want it backed up at MSTP typically, right? Maybe they'll do BACnet IP. They'll feel comfortable with that. But using ZigBee wireless, they just don't have a great comfort level on that. There's no reason they shouldn't, because these are standalone. They have programs in them, right? You can run them totally standalone if you want, but just the way it is. All right, so back to the gateway. It has an Ethernet port on board. The Ethernet port allows me to connect to it and begin to configure a network and to create visualizations. It has a default static IP address of 10.50.80.3. You don't need to know that today. It's in all our literature, excuse me. But you hard connect to it, hit 10.50.80.3, and you're into this environment, which is our engineering programming environment. Once you get on it, there's a file tree on the side. It allows you to pull in pre-configured objects, which for you would typically be an SE8000 of some kind. So an 8650, an 8350, you bring it in, all the points are there. And then you put in the communication credentials for the gateway. So you tell it what PAN ID, the personal area network it needs, what channel it's communicating on. We recommend channel 25. PAN ID is a unique number. So if you have multiple gateways on a site, you're going to have multiple PAN IDs. But if you use channel 25, you can use it on all of the gateways now. When I go out to the room controller in the field, I'm going to put that PAN ID in for the gateway I want to communicate to. I'm going to put the same channel, and I'm going to give it a unique MAC address. So I'm recommending that when you design a job, you don't use more than 20 room controllers on a gateway. Is it possible to use more? It is. But what happens is you start losing, you start degrading your signal strength, right? So not signal strength, but your transmission of data back and forth. And it really starts to bog it down. So I say design to 20, but if you have a job with 22 or 24, yes, we could do it off of one gateway. I wouldn't push it past 25 though. So, the hard stop should be 25, and then you've got to add a second gateway into your network, okay? Each gateway and each node on the network, so each SE8000 is a repeater. Recommended design distances between SE8000s or VT8000s is 75 feet. That's design, right? It will communicate further, right? Every device is a repeater. We recommend that you go no more than 5 hops in a straight line. So 75 feet, 75 feet, 75 feet, right? When you're 5 hops out, don't go any further. You can, but again, you're going to have all kinds of lag time that you're going to start creating on the network. I already mentioned 20 8000s per MPM. The MPM itself has a higher power radio. It's got a 150-foot radius that it communicates to. So your first room controller could be 150 feet out, then you go 75, 75, 75. It's rare that we see a job like that. More typically, you're going to want to put the MPM in the center of a cluster of room controllers. So you're doing a wing of a building, you got 20 rooms, 5 rooms down into that wing, you're going to throw an MPM in the center of that cluster. And then you're probably going to take an Ethernet cable from that MPM and bring it into a switch and back into your network level controller, whatever that is, right? That's what your architecture is going to look like. When I talk design distances, I'm talking about the constructed walls of concrete with rebar. Communicates fine. We do a lot of college dorms. Like that's a pretty popular military barracks, historical buildings with stone. We're really effective at communicating through that kind of material. What we don't communicate through, RF of all kinds doesn't communicate through, is water, right? So if you put a thermostat right behind someone's back and they're leaning up against it, it may stop communicating, right? While they're sitting there. Mirrors are like metal, non-perforated sheet metal. It will communicate through perforated sheet metal. I have an example of a job that we did in New York City at St. Pat's Cathedral, communicating about 100 feet line of sight from gateways, several gateways, to 45 fan coil units that were in custom enclosures with a metal mesh on the front. Works fine. In fact, in that same building, several of the fan coil units were below the altar. which is the stone's probably a couple feet thick, communicated fine. So, but talking about going through floors, I do not recommend that you design for communication between floors. Why? Because in modern constructed buildings, we often have a metal floor plan with concrete on top, right? It's a solid metal barrier. I wouldn't design that way. So put an MPM per floor. If you have a wooden building, you can communicate between floors, but I still don't recommend that you do that. I still think you should look at it as an MPM per floor. As far as what we have out there for projects, there are tens of thousands of these wireless systems out there deployed in all kinds of buildings. I mentioned St. Pat's. Iona College in New York was one that we did just recently. University of Missouri has well over 2,000 deployed wireless thermostats. We've seen them put into small retail buildings, into commercial office space, often in hotels, that sort of thing. So, okay. Now, we'll talk about when it makes sense to use wireless, right? So if you have existing wiring in your job, obviously you can reuse it, right? I'm not recommending that you don't. If you can run communication bus inexpensively, do it. Do a hard connected communicating system. I would recommend that. It makes sense, and you can use wireless sensors in a hardwired communication trunk, right? So you get back to an MSTP to the room controller, right? And wireless peripherals. But there are jobs where you just can't get communication. So St. Pat's Cathedral, again, in New York, was an example of that. They were taking all the conduit off the wall, all exposed. They were bringing it back to its historical look and feel. They wanted nothing. So they couldn't run out to these remote fan coil units, right? Everything came from underneath. It got expensive, so they wanted to go wireless communication. That makes sense. A lot of historical buildings in DC we've been pulled into. Again, they don't want to bust out plaster. The ceilings are solid. It gets super expensive, or we use union labor. So labor can be a component of that. So that's where wireless communications make sense, right? So, all right. I've got a couple quick use cases here. This is like a typical school. So this is an application I see often. You've got a unit ventilator, on the outside wall. We know that that's not the best place to use a thermostat, right? But it's inexpensive if I hard connect in a thermostat right there at the unit vent, right? So I could do that and put a wireless sensor, across the room, right? I get my temperature sensing in the optimal spot, right? Communicating back to my SC8000, right? And now if I can't get communications, hard connected back to the MSTP to the thermostat, I could use ZigBee wireless through gateway and then bring it into my network level controller, right? Pretty simple thing. And I could do HVAC. I also could do lighting control if I wanted to. I could do power monitoring if I wanted to do that. So, okay. This is an example of just a retail store. Same kind of concept. I'm showing an NPM UN here from my IO device, but that could be my network controller with some IO on it, right? I can do metering. I can bring meter information into the gateway via Modbus. I actually have a hard connected Modbus port, sorry, on the gateway, on the UN, excuse me, on the UN. So, okay. Any questions about the gateway? I know I'm going kind of fast.
What type of power has to be brought to the gateway? You said.
Thank you for asking that question. Both the room control and the gateway require 24 volts AC.
Got it.
All right. Anything else? Okay. I'll move on. Okay, now I'm going to talk about our Wi-Fi card. So, in the back of the SE8000, we have a port. So you pull the thermostat off its base. There's a port here that you can plug this Wi-Fi card into. Okay, here's the model number of the Wi-Fi card. And what that gets you is Wi-Fi enabled BACnet, right? So I'm going to connect it to an access point. Connect it to an access point. At that point, I'm communicating Wi-Fi down to my thermostat, but the information is BACnet IP. So I can pull that thermostat into my network if I have a network level controller on that network, right? And it's just a BACnet IP device. all of the BACnet objects that you expect to see in the 8000 are available on AVIL. So now the Wi-Fi, the 8000 becomes virtually a BACnet server. So what else does it give me? Well, it gives me email notifications to 3 different users. So I can actually send alarms. So this connected to a access point, right? If you have a email server on site, I can send email notifications up to 3 different users on that site, right? Which is pretty cool, right? If you want to do a micro BMS system, real simple, get started. You have a customer that has some problem areas. They want to be alerted to temperature and humidity, that kind of thing, you know, or some other external input I bring into the room controller, I can do that, right? As far as setting it up, I install the Wi-Fi card, power up my thermostat. I connect to my SE8000 using a web browser from a smart device. And that's where I set up the network credentials, right? Once I do that, I can scan the Wi-Fi network, discover the device, connect the device, right? And then integrate via backend IP. Okay. So again, all of the objects that you would expect in 8000 are available. This was released mid to late last year, 2019. We had some initial issues like all manufacturers, right? When you release a new product, we just released a new firmware, and we think it fixed some of those issues. So actually, it fixed some of the issues. I shouldn't say I think. All right. The next thing you can do is set this up just as a BACnet server all by itself, right? And send notifications onto the network, the local network. So the types of information that you get, this is an example, as you can see, of a couple of different, an alarm, right? An alarm cleared. This is what you would see on the local network if you set those alarms up locally, okay? So that's the Wi-Fi card, right? Any questions on that? Okay, I'm going to move on. So guess what? We have a cloud solution. So doesn't everybody else, right? There's a lot of them out there. We know ours is different because I think we have a lot more flexibility built into our solution. It does some of the typical things that you would expect. So trending in the cloud, temperature, set point changes in the cloud, scheduling from the cloud. It's really built around, a single site or a multi-site application. We're calling it Facilities Expert. It's a second generation cloud solution. So we had a cloud solution called Building Insights, Building Expert, that we built for the retail space. Had some pretty good success with it. But it didn't have all the features that we wanted. That was one thing. And Schneider wanted to consolidate clouds, right? So we incorporated Building Insights into a single Schneider cloud that allows us to pull in some other information like power monitoring, right? And analytics and things like that. So that's what Facilities Expert is. How you get there is you install a Wi-Fi card on an 8600. And in its first release, it's only 8600. By the end of the year, it'll be all of our 8000 series product. I connect it to my Wi-Fi network. Wi-Fi network's connected to the cloud. I subscribe to an account, and it allows me to pull that SE8000 in and visualize it, right? So I can do things like look at set points, change set points, trend logs, things like that. One site or multiple sites. In addition to that, there's an energy metering component, right, which allows you to bring in, by using this EcoStruxure gateway, I can bring in Modbus energy meters, and I can bring that data out into the cloud. The cloud has an open API, so if you said to me I wanted to use my analytics package of choice, right, we could set that up so you could mine the data from the cloud. You don't have to use our interface. Okay. It's positioned for, I guess you'd say energy managers, end users, right, and technicians. So there's 3 components to the way the visualization in the cloud of how this thing looks. There are some preventive maintenance components, so we can import data on equipment. We can set alarms and alerts and take action on that equipment. So we think that it might be interesting for mechanical contractors to take a look at this as a preventive maintenance type product that they can sell. There is a monthly subscription fee. So right now they're saying there's a subscription fee per device. I said they. My team is saying, I'm trying to convince them to give us maybe a single fee we can build into a project. If that's interesting, I'd like to hear your feedback on that at the end. If that makes more sense than trying to push out a monthly subscription fee. And I know everyone's going to say no subscription fee is better than any subscription fee. I agree, but I don't know if I can convince my management that that's the way to go. So,
Ralph, did you say that you could do a mass schedule change if you had multiple
Yes.
like retail?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So, yes, there's a component to it that allows you to do that, Paul. As far as sites go, right now they're saying the limitation is 50 SE8000s per site. Right, so it's really positioned at smaller buildings, small, medium-sized buildings. It's not meant to be a full BMS. It's just a way to schedule your zones and your HVAC equipment, do some energy monitoring, that sort of thing. There's no plant control component of this yet. That's coming later, though, at a later date. So, okay, so the other part of this is that the customer, the end user, can look at this through a smartphone, a tablet, or a computer. Smartphone could be on site, right, or it could be remote. It's connected to the cloud. It's a commercial-facing application. It's really not a residential type application. It doesn't really play well in residential market, at least at this point in time. So, okay. And Paul, to your point, this is you can see there's a map view here, right? You've got multiple sites, right? And you click on the site and you can drill down, and you get alarms and alerts based on the site. Right?
So, say you had 10 sites, could you do schedule changes for all 10 at one time, or you have to go to each one?
Yes, you can do all 10 at one time. Yep.
So Ralph, does that tie in with your zoning system at all?
So not yet, but it could down the road. Is that
Right?
You see an opportunity for that?
Well, I think there's some specific stuff that we've looked at where, they'll have a zoning system in a site, and they have multiple sites of that. So I just didn't know if that was, coming. And then, so
Yeah.
there's no on-site BMS system support yet.
No, but I've
Okay.
got an architecture slide I'm going to show you in a minute, because I think that some people see this as a threat to selling our traditional BMS solutions. I think you can have both things, and I'll show you why I think that's the case. As far as zoning goes, and in the 8000 series, we have the VVT stat now, right? In the VTZ or the SEZ. We're working on putting the rooftop control and decision making into the SE8600. Once we have that, then the answer is yes. We'll be able to do that really well. So, and that's happening sooner than later. That should happen probably late summer, something like that. So,
Yeah, so this is Marshall. I want to jump back to the
okay.
branding side of this. So as far as all the dashboards, is there any contractor branding that could be added so that, let's say I take this to one of my large property managers, is it going to say Schneider? Can we put systems contractors anywhere in there so they, we're kind of, whoever they're using as far as locally also knows that we're providing this solution. So how are we protected from like a Schneider coming in at some point and, kind of blocking us out?
So the answer to that is, I don't know. No, I think it's yes, but I'm going to verify that. Okay, so I'll get back. I'm going to write a note to myself. I believe that that's the case because this is really positioned at multi-site retail is what they're thinking, right? Banks, right? Car dealerships, that kind of thing. And they know that contractors, obviously, based on what you just said, it's true, want their own branding on board. And that's one of the reasons that we have the Viconics thermostat, right? It's a white branded product, right? So you protect your customer base. But I will get back to you on that. So, okay, let me finish my presentation. I've got a couple questions for for the crew. But here's a visualization, typical, kind of looks like a thermostat, right? I got 4 thermostats on the screen, if you can see this here, right? And then I can drill down and get a little more granular if I need to, okay? Schedules, you can see there's a scheduling component down here, per zone, per site, that kind of thing. As far as the maintenance view, so you can pull QR codes into this, right? I see a picture of a packaged rooftop unit here. So you can pull the QR codes. You can actually put, excuse me, specific information on belts, filters, things like that. So you can build this up as part of a preventive maintenance program with your customers, right? So, so I keep talking about bringing up this architecture. So this is part of the architecture. This is the rest of the architecture, right? So we have a cloud solution. I'll go back. So we have a cloud solution connected to Wi-Fi, connected to an 8000. What else can we do with it? This is what I think we can do with it, right? So you can have your own BMS dome right on site, because this is a BACnet IP device once it gets on the Wi-Fi, right? So I can still read and write data to the 8000, right? I could do all kinds of customizations out of the 8000, lighting control, standard HVAC applications, custom, right? And I also can do wireless monitoring, right? And I can have a field technician view for on site, right? So we can have all of these things as one system. This gives you a lot of flexibility. That's where I think we set ourselves apart from our competitors. So that's really the end of my presentation.
Hey, Ralph, is there a demo site for the cloud?
Great question. I'm working on it. The product manager keeps promising me every week that there's one. As soon as I get it, I'll roll it out to you guys. I'll show you. What I think we should do is, if you're interested, we do a presentation on any one of these components I showed today. We could do a full-on presentation. So I'm going to stop my screen share. We do a presentation on that specific component. So I think we should do, if you're interested in facilities expert, we should do a presentation on facilities expert specifically. If that makes sense to you guys. And with a demo of a site, so you can see live what it looks like. I threw an email out to Brian this morning, and I offered up gateway training on how to configure a gateway, what that looks like. Lewis scripting could do that. We do a wireless ecosystem training, and we could do a Wi-Fi card training. But they should all be separate. We'll do them really quick. They'll probably be 15, 20 minutes. That's all it should take. All right. So, and what I would do is I pull Steve in to do those, because he's got everything set up in his lab. So.
Ralph, I just have a question. If all this stuff's Wi-Fi BACnet, what about security? Because I know with banks and stuff like that, they really have an issue with Wi-Fi.
So yeah, so we have encryption on the Wi-Fi communication card. That's
Okay.
8000. So
Okay, good.
yeah,
Everybody-
and it's an encrypted solution up to the cloud as well, right? And then if you put in a hard connected BMS, right, the network at the network level, that's up to you, right? So, but that's a good question. In places we haven't been successful with wireless, military bases don't like wireless, federal installations don't like wireless. Yeah, but I think most college campuses, commercial office buildings, banks are kind of 50-50. We've done some bank projects or banking projects. It really depends on the bank, right, and who you're talking to. We do have a white paper from Wells Fargo about a wireless solution. The Building Insights, the predecessor to Facilities Expert. So if you want access to that white paper, I can send that to you.
Yeah, when you
Just
get a
send me an
chance.
email, please.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, I'll send you an email on it.
Yeah, cool. Any other questions?
You said a small fee, and they have any idea yet, or they're not far enough along?
I do. Do you want to tell you in front of your customers? I'll tell you what. It's list. So there's a list price. List price is $5 is connected to SC8000, right? You get a
per stat.
Yeah.
So if you have a retail account with 4 rooftops, so you need $5 per stat connected.
Right, but you get a discount off of that.
Right.
Right.
List
So,
price.
Yeah, and there's a couple different ways for customers to participate. So well, we could talk about that. We can get into those details when we do the facilities expert presentation. What I'm pushing for, so first of all, what do you guys think about paying a monthly fee? Any feedback?
Well, yeah, I'll speak up. So I run the service department as well as the controls group, and I think there could be some value to that as long as it's not as long as it's not an excessive fee. So that's something I've got to do some math on, because we've got some other solutions that we're looking into. You know, because of the light commercial, you know, you got the 3 or 4 or 5 rooftop systems. So, you know, from my perspective, if it's reasonable enough, I will roll it into my value added service. You know, so the key word there is, you know, how expensive is it? And if we can make that value proposition, or if it benefits me, then I'll invest that. So I'll do some math and get up with Paul on kind of some reasonable pricing structure, because we do some stuff with Train. I know that's a bad word as well. So they've asked me the same thing. And so I'm very interested in your solution. But for me, it kind of goes back to, you know, if I invest all this time in a product, and then, you know, what's the risk associated I have with getting all my eggs in Viconic's basket, right? Which is Schneider, because we compete with Schneider locally, right? So I've got to understand that Schneider relationship, or kind of where that separation is from this product versus like our local branch offices and so on. Sure.
And yes, the branches have access to this product. Do they sell it? No, they don't. They're going after the whales, right? So, although, you know, something like a nursing home, they might be interested in. So yes, we could talk about that. Maybe we can have a specific call on that, if that would be helpful. So, as far as the fee structure, so $5 list price, Brody obviously gets a discount off of that. They can do what they want. I'm pushing for a one-time fee. So what if there was a lifetime fee per device? Say it was $50 a device you build into the cost of the job. Does that make any sense to you guys?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so what I've always pushed when I've had this discussion with many different manufacturers from time to time, and, you know, you think of the Nest thermostat, right? You think of Honeywell or Ecobee. Basically, you know, that web fee is built into that product, right? And then you have life. And that is one of the things that I had been looking at is, you know, if we're going owner direct, we're able to build that fee in and let them know, hey, you know, we're going to give you access to this, no additional cost after you invest in this hardware, right? That makes sense to me. So, you know, once again, it all goes back to a couple other key risk factors, right? The SWOT analysis that I do on a product before I, you know, put systems contractors at risk. So I think there's I like that idea better than the monthly subscription.
Okay. Thank you.
But, you know, I wouldn't be opposed to an either or, but I think we've just, you know, got to look at it from a business perspective and a risk analysis.
Sure. I mean, my suggestion to the product manager was, I'm dealing with a global, so we're a global company, right? And he's got a different need in France than he does in the US, right? But I'm telling him in the US, we need to do this. We need to offer both, is what I think, right? And then you can make a choice, right? So, but I think, you know, right, the good news is we're just rolling this out, so they're really open to new ideas, right? If we're gonna sell some jobs, right, because of that, I'm gonna tell you right now, if that makes a difference to you and that you're gonna tell me you're gonna give me projects, I'm gonna make that happen, right? So that's my job internally. But I think it's a really great solution. What I like about it is that you can have a local BMS, so you can have a standalone site, but then you can pull into the cloud. You can do both things, right? And you can build that up, right? You can build it up from something small, from a single thermostat. So, but of course, you know, I have to sell my products, so I love them, right? Any other questions?
So you had mentioned that you have local support there up in the Northeast. And I have always been leaning on Patrick for the last couple of years. Is that the correct avenue, or should I be leaning on the Northeast?
So you want the corporate answer or my answer? The corporate answer is you should lean on Steve Winterberger in Connecticut. My answer is you work with whoever you're most comfortable with, and it's okay to call Patrick. I'm okay with that. He's global support. He's awesome. I've known him for a long time, and no one's pushing back on me, so keep doing it if that's what you want to go to. Okay. But what I can't do is easily get Patrick onto a site for you, like to get you in physically in front of you. Yeah.
I've never needed him on site. He's always responsive and fixes the solutions, either email or voicemail.
Yeah. Did you use the chat at all on Viconic site?
Yes, I've used it quite a bit.
Good. So yeah, he's absolutely fine. You can ask him Schneider Electric product questions because they're the same, so it doesn't really matter. So if it comes up, yeah.
Perfect.
Cool. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, quick question. So, some of my younger controls techs that are coming up have never seen line code, right? Lua is line code. I'm a little bit older, so that's kind of how I cut my teeth. Most of the guys are used to visual, basic, type programming. So what resources or training, outside of just, trying to read a book, who is that something that Paul would offer? Some basic Lua scripting, does that come through you guys?
So it would come through us. I have a guide. I'm making a note. I have a guide I can send out. So when I answer your question about the brand on Facilities Expert, also include a Lua programming guide. There's a ton of information on the internet about Lua. It's they use it in the auto industry. They use it. Xbox 360 was written in Lua. We have a bunch of code we can share with you. Everything we've written, we can share with you. So if you want an example of what we've done with a package rooftop unit, we actually wrote a really nice unit ventilator, a couple of different unit ventilator, which probably isn't popular, Marshall, where you are. Maybe it is. I don't know if you use unit vents or not. Definitely in the northern part of the country we do. We wrote a really nice script around that. We've done, I want to say we probably have, more than 1,000 scripts. I know we do for different variations on standard HVAC equipment. We can share that. The other part of it is I can get Steve. We can do a remote call and do it'd be quick, right? Like a 30-minute Lua scripting class. And we'll pick an application and we'll break it down. Absolutely, you could do that for you.
Let's do that.
Yeah, I think we should set that up, Ralph. That's a good idea.
Okay. Just you guys tell me when. It's a really good time right now.
Yeah.
So
No, I agree.
We'll do it when you guys are available.
Okay. Do you want to do something next week? Is it that soon?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
We
I
talked
could
to.
probably do that.
So let's work around you, Marshall, and tell us when a good time is for you and your guys, and we'll work around you. So.
All right, what I'll do, I'll follow up, Paul. I'll follow up after this because I want to check Tony, Ryan, and a couple of the other guys' schedules and make sure I can get them all blocked out. So maybe in the next 2 weeks for sure.
Okay. All right, great.
Ralph, for that, will we need a sample to work on, or can you do it just on your computer?
We'll do it on the computer. Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, and if we could set the guys up. So Lua's written in text. So we use Notepad++. It's freeware, so we can share that with everybody. It's up to Marshall if they want the guys to actually have something physical to work on. We could do it live and then do a follow-up with live equipment if you want at some point. It doesn't really matter. You tell me. So.
Yeah, I would like. We've got a few. We actually had installed the thermostats in our office, and then we're doing some little projects. So we may actually have a few on site, and if not, I'll just order a couple extra for the guys to have as kind of demos. They do better working with live equipment, in my opinion. So touching and feeling is always the best method.
Yeah, so if you have some installed in the office, you could just use those. That would be fine. And then they're going to need a micro USB cable, right? And their laptops will be fine. And then I'll talk to Steve about content. What we'll do is I'll have him do a simple example that he can show them they can load locally. We'll use the uploader tool. We'll take them through that, show them how to use that. And then something they can load into your thermostat locally that won't blow everything up. And then we can take you through like a more complex Lua script, right? And break it down. So then that way they'll see it, they'll understand it better with their hands when he goes to the more complex one. But I think they'll get it if they're controls guys. So, okay. It's English based. I think it's pretty easy to understand how to read it. Okay. Anything else?
Thanks, Ralph. Appreciate it.
Is it time for a coffee? I took Paul. I didn't think I'd take a half hour. Look at we already went over an hour.
No,
I
that
guess
was
I
great.
talk a lot.
Appreciate it. We appreciate it, Ralph.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
Ralph,
you.
I think did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it, you guys.
Thanks, Ralph.
Thank
All right,
you.
nice seeing you, Tom.
Have a
See you
good day.
later.
You too.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
Stay safe.